little shindig unless it doesn't go well, in which case it's Nomad's fault. So turn it over to one of you.
The story you are about to see is false. We've invented the names, we've invented the evidence, we've invented damn near everything. But the principles are real. Today we are going to basically show you what goes on in a court in abbreviated form that will hopefully educate and amuse you. For the purposes of time constraints, if you want to know who's playing what, it's up on the screens right now. If you want further information, the URL is up there. And now for purposes of introduction, we will start with the prosecuting attorney. Out of the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., Richard, I got your U.S. code right here, Salgado. For the defense, operating out of the Stanford University Law School Center for the Internet and Society, the Amazon of the defense bar, Jennifer Granick. The presiding judge, the Honorable Philip M. Pro, U.S. District Court Chief Justice for the District of Nevada. And wearing some snappy black robes, looks like Darth Vader without the mask. And now, the feature bout of the evening, brought to you by Wizard Keys Incorporated, your one-stop mom-and-pop security shop in the New York and New Jersey metropolitan area. The wonderful Caesar's Palace, bringing the splendor of ancient Rome to modern Babylon. And Black Hat, bringing the security community, the hacker community, the law enforcement community, and the press together for several years now and pipping them all off to each other. And now, with no further ado, let's get ready to litigate!
Wow, Ken is more excited about this than the time when the three-letter agency he worked for faked the moon landings. Great job, Ken. Okay, Caitlin, I think it's time to call everything to order.
All rise. Hacker Court is now in session.
Please have a seat, ladies and gentlemen. I've never held anybody in contempt in 23 years as a judge, but after that introduction, I was almost ready to do so. But I think we can get started with our trial. Ms. Clerk, are the members of the jury ready to come in? Why don't you bring them in? If you'd all rise again for the members of the jury, please. Jurors must be treated with respect, so you always stand when they enter the room and leave. Though we could make an exception for some of you if you're tired. But,
All this standing and sitting, it's like almost like Hacker Church.
yeah.
There must be some atheists out there that are still sitting.
Oh my gosh, Ken, look. Here come the suckers. I mean, the jurors down.
I noted all male and all white jury. No Batson challenge.
My
You
bad.
know,
This would make it better.
The objections based on race and gender makeup of the jury have been duly noted and discarded.
All right, it's like musical chairs. One of you does not have one, but I think we're going to take care of that. All right, have a seat, everybody, please. Well, we're now going to convene the trial, United States of America versus J.B. Weasel? Yes, J.B. Weasel. The record should reflect the presence of Mr. Weasel, together with counsel Ms. Granick and Mr. Salgado, on behalf of Plaintiff United States. And let me just preface what you're going to see with just a couple of comments. In a real trial, the jury that's seated before us would be typically comprised in a criminal case of 12 individuals and maybe one or two alternates. They would have gone through a process of jury selection or voir dire, during which they would be queried by the presiding judge, also in some cases by counsel, to test their ability to serve as fair and impartial jurors in the trial of the particular case. And I would have some preliminary jury instructions for them regarding their responsibilities as jurors, a little bit about the standards of proof that would apply in the case and things of that sort. So they would be oriented as to what the case was about. That's not going to happen here in the interest of time, so you can hear the testimony of witnesses and the arguments of the attorneys, and much less from me until the Q&A perhaps. We're going to launch right in to the opening statements. Now, the attorneys for both the plaintiff, United States, the prosecution in this case, and the defendant would have an opportunity to address the jury in opening statement. That's a descriptive outline, if you will, of what counsel expect the evidence in the case will show, and then they'll launch into the presentation of their evidence. Government counsel will call its witnesses first. They'll testify on direct examination, be cross-examined by Ms. Granick. At the close of the government's case, the defense has the opportunity to present evidence. So the defendant in a criminal trial has no obligation to present any evidence or to call any witnesses, and the jury can draw no inference of guilt from the fact that a defendant does not testify in a case or does not call witnesses, and that's because, simply put, every person charged with a criminal offense in the United States is presumed to be innocent of the crime charged unless and until the prosecution is able to establish their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. At the end of the case, I will instruct the jury on the standard of proof to be applied and some other instructions regarding the elements of the crimes that are charged, and then the attorneys will make their closing arguments to the jury. I'm not going to talk any more about the charges. The indictment would have either been read or summarized, but suffice it to say the case is a conspiracy. The attorneys will outline what that involves in just a couple of minutes, but essentially a conspiracy is an agreement by two or more persons to either do something unlawful or to do something lawful by unlawful means, and in the case of a conspiracy such as we have here, taking steps in furtherance of that conspiracy will be referred to as overt acts. So with that, Mr. Salgado, I'll turn it over to you for the government's opening statement.
And for those of you who didn't do the assigned reading, it's in the book, all the documents.
Page 465, it starts.
It's compelling reading. Ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen of the jury, thank you for being here this afternoon, and all of you. I'm Richard Salgado. I am the prosecutor. I represent the United States government. Today, you're going to be hearing about a conspiracy to violate 3 federal laws, specifically 3 hacker-type laws. The crime charged in this case is one of conspiracy, the agreement to do something unlawful and to engage in unlawful acts to achieve that unlawful goal. You're going to hear a story that started about a year ago, almost exactly. And it involved 2 individuals, one who's the defendant here, who goes by the nickname Weasel. And you will hear a little bit about Weasel. You will hear Weasel was an avid online game player. In fact, some might even say he was a religious game player on a game offered by a company known as Geta Entertainment. The online game some of you may be familiar with is called Get a Life. Get a Life is an online virtual world where subscribers to Get a Life can move their fictitious characters, avatars throughout the world, questing, getting loot, getting money, getting items, fighting monsters, cooperating and fighting with one another. You will hear that Weasel was in fact one of the original developers of this game and worked at Geta Entertainment. You will also hear that Weasel's character in the game was very powerful. It was one of the most powerful in the game, was one of the earliest characters in the game. And you will hear that as a result, he formed around him a group of loyal people. He called them his guild. In his guild was one particular person who was a young, relatively young player. His name was Ryan Bulat. He went by the name Terran in the game. He was the second person in this conspiracy that you'll hear about. You'll hear that about a year ago, Weasel and his gang were involved in what is known as a quest in the game to kill a monster and obtain a particularly valuable item as the result. You will hear evidence that he was unsuccessful in this bid because there was another player, not part of the guild, who was able to steal this item first. That did not please Weasel, and Weasel decided to get even. And you'll hear evidence that he did so by agreeing with Ryan, a player who idolized Weasel, who wanted to be Weasel, to join with him in fighting to get back what Weasel thought was rightfully his, and to punish Jericho, the player that stole what Weasel considered to be his. In doing so, you will hear that Weasel trained Ryan on the techniques needed to successfully get at Jericho. You will hear evidence that Weasel gave Ryan the tools needed to break into the computers, information that only Weasel would have on how to get back at Jericho. And in fact, you will hear evidence that using Ryan, Weasel was able to steal essentially Jericho's very existence in the game and take it to him for himself. You'll hear not only as a result of this did Weasel's character grow in strength, but that in fact Weasel himself was able to profit monetarily as a result of what essentially was an online jacking. This is a case of a murder, well, a cyber murder for hire. It involves Weasel and it involves Ryan. You'll be hearing from Ryan today, who will tell you the whole story. What is criminal here, you will hear, is the agreement to engage in these crimes. I ask only of you that you listen to the evidence and come to a conclusion at the end that is fair and just. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salgado. Ms. Granick, you may proceed with the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a boy who got himself into real criminal trouble playing a make-believe game. And when this boy found himself in trouble, and he realized that he couldn't get himself out of this trouble, no one could get him out of this trouble. His parents couldn't get him out of the trouble. In fact, his parents are probably how he got involved in this whole mess in the first place. He decided to come up with a make-believe story. And that make-believe story is that Weasel made him do it.
He narked.
This boy, Ryan, is going to come here before you, and he is going to testify that though he hacked into the Air Force server, though he hacked into the Geta Entertainment server, though he stole items from Jericho's character, it was really Weasel's fault, because Weasel made him do it. And your job here, ladies and gentlemen, is to be able to tell what's real from what's make-believe. In this virtual world, you will hear that Ryan was not only in Weasel's guild, but he was an underling in the guild. He desperately wanted to impress Weasel. He desperately wanted to become like Weasel, to win his respect. And you will hear that Weasel is a person who, while playing this game, had, as the government put it, an almost religious respect for the rules of the game. A person who believed that people should not go outside the game to purchase their characters, or to purchase extra armor, or to buy more powerful weapons. He was somebody who believed that you play the game as the game is meant to be played. There was someone playing this game who didn't respect the rules of the game, and that person was Brian Martin, who played a character called Jericho. Jericho broke the rules of the game in order to take something that would have, under those rules, rightfully have belonged to Weasel. And Weasel did not like this, it's true. But what did he do? According to the rules of the game, you will hear that he petitioned the game owners for a ruling. He complained to the owners of the game. That is the way that problems are supposed to be addressed, and that is the course that Weasel took. This was not enough for Ryan. Ryan, you will hear, wanted to do something for his friend Weasel. He wanted more. He wanted Weasel's respect. He wanted to improve the status of his own character. He wanted to ingratiate himself. And maybe he wanted to make a little money, because you'll hear that that's exactly what he did. He broke into an Air Force computer. He broke into the Get a Life game server. He moved the Jericho character's virtual items, and he reset the character vengefully back to level 0. This is something that you can't do in real life, to take away a person's skill and experience and essentially turn back time and make them into a baby again. But this is a make-believe game, and in this make-believe game, you can do that. In this make-believe game, there are rare items that a character has the permission to use or not to use. Now, the evidence you will see will show you that Weasel never asked Ryan to do any of this stuff. Weasel and Ryan never agreed. You'll see chat logs and instant message logs in the government's case that will show that Ryan was chomping at the bit to do something to please Weasel, whom he called master. And that Weasel never suggested that Ryan take this real-world way to subvert the rules of the game. When Ryan got in trouble, and get in trouble he did, because you will hear evidence that all the logs on the Air Force computer and on the Get a Life computer point to one person as the perpetrator of this crime, and that is Ryan. He decided that he was going to turn on the only person who he could pin this on, the person closest to him, to turn on Weasel so that he could save his own skin. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Ryan is the Weasel in this case, and he should be the defendant as well.
Thank you, Ms. Granick. Mr. Salgado, you may call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Mr. Richard Baggins.
All right, Mr. Baggins, if you'd please step up. We've got a microphone here for you.
Where is the Bagginses?
And the clerk is busy, so I will administer the oath. Mr. Baggins, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matter pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Absolutely, I do, Your Honor.
Have a seat, please. State your full name and spell your last name for the record. Go ahead and take that mic.
My full name is Richard Baggins, and that's spelled Baggins.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Salgado.
Mr. Baggins, if you could take the mic out of the holder there, this might be a little easier. Could you tell us, sir, where you are employed?
I'm the CEO of Geta Entertainment.
Can you tell the jury what Geta Entertainment does?
Yes, Geta Entertainment is the premier online gaming institution in not only America but in the world. We create virtual reality games for the edification, primarily for the spiritual benefit and edification of those who participate in our game.
What online games do you offer?
We have two right now. We have Get a Life and we have Had a Life. Get a Life was so successful, and we found that seniors are the largest growing group of online gamers. So we now offer Had a Life, which has stumblers, dribblers, and walkers as participating. You said you wanted the truth, did you not, Your Honor? And this is
I did.
it's the bitter truth.
Bet your life. You're in Las Vegas.
You know, why don't we talk after this?
Thank you, sir. Would you tell the jury a little bit about the game Get a Life?
It's a global, massive multiplayer game. That means players subscribe and use avatars, which are virtual or digital images or representations of either their person or their psychic state. to represent them in the game. It's a landscape, a spiritual landscape that covers many, many continents, 5, I believe. There are many, many levels to the game, many classes, races of being, and you get to participate at any level you are capable of achieving in the game. It's very much like life, except it isn't.
Were you with Geta Entertainment from the beginning of the company?
No, I wasn't. It began as a gaming enterprise that was run by, you know what a lot of these tech people are like. They don't have much of a head for business. And while they created an interesting virtual space, it was not making much money. It made enough to go public, which meant it interested investors sufficiently to float an IPO. And shortly after that, 4 months later, I was invited to take over as CEO in order to facilitate the cash flow which would sustain the spiritual development of our membership.
Well, was Geta Entertainment profitable before you came on board?
Barely. It wasn't losing money, but it wasn't making a lot of money. And while money is not our primary concern, money is our secondary concern. It's the second most important thing to us. Spirituality of the players is first. Nevertheless, in order to sustain the game, which meant enhancing the spirituality of the players, we needed an adequate cash flow, not only now but far into the future. And to that end, we developed a whole set of auxiliary and subsidiary ways of increasing cash flow, including action figures and the like.
Thank you, sir. Do you know a J.B. Weasel?
I'm afraid I do. Yeah?
Is he in the courtroom today?
Yes, he is.
Would you identify him for the record?
He's the portly presence over there with the...
Thank you, Your Honor. You know him by Weasel?
We all know him by Weasel, unless you knew him back in school, where I understand his name was Small Balls. But...
And how do you know Weasel?
He's actually been with the game longer than I have. He's been with Geta Entertainment from the very beginning. He is smarter than he looks, and he created an extraordinary, very effective game. He's the chief designer, actually, and one of the engineers. And because he's a player and took this game so seriously, he in fact has what I think is the oldest character in the game. He's been a participant, and he's helped out on the network configuration work for some time.
So he's no longer with Geta Entertainment?
No, he is not.
Okay. When did he depart? Do you remember?
Is this critical?
No.
Okay. Recently.
Let me ask you, you suggested that he was one of the original programmers on Get a Life. What else did he do with the company?
Well, he was a programmer and he was a network troubleshooter. As a programmer, that means he built the stuff. He built the code, he wrote it, he designed a lot of the game. He was immersed in it. He was invested in it far beyond anything that we considered healthy. But we were willing to take advantage of that obsession and compulsion and allow him to move on. He was, as I say, he worked on the network as a troubleshooter. So he worked in administrative tasks. He understood the security of the network. He worked in all aspects of both the physical and the digital structure.
Okay.
Return on investment.
Did he also work on the security of the network?
Yes, he did. He was instrumental in establishing and maintaining the security of our network.
You mentioned earlier on that Geta Entertainment, in part, it was engaged in online games. What else did Geta Entertainment do?
Well, in addition to Had a Life, which is helping seniors make the transition from this life to the next, we had a contract with the Air Force. They were so impressed with our virtual design that they asked us to develop a flight simulator for them, and he was involved with that. He was our man on the job, so to speak.
And what did he do with respect to that Air Force contract?
Well, he worked with the Air Force to make sure the network and the computers involved were configured so they'd work with each other. Until he left, he was the only man we had to whom those responsibilities were delegated.
Were the circumstances surrounding his departure from the company positive or negative or something in between?
I would say, well, a negative. I would say they were pretty negative.
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
Negative.
Can you describe the? Can you describe those circumstances, sir?
Things were getting pretty difficult, and he was becoming very upset with the way I was directing the company.
In what way?
Well, like a lot of people whose values are skewed, he didn't think that financial success was compatible with the kind of integrity with which I did the work and which I wanted the company to manifest. He was obsessed with this game, and he had an undue sense of ownership of it. He resented authority, which is not unusual in the hacker culture, as you know, and he resented anyone who would give him really orders that overrided his values in terms of how the game should be played and how the rules should be written and just how life should be lived online, where we created it. And it became intolerable to him. And finally, we had to ask him to quietly leave.
Were there any particular rules or ways of playing the game that you conflicted with him on?
Well, there were lots of rules. Yeah, we had lots of rules. He's a pretty rule-based guy, and apparently games work best with a structure that gives people the safety they need in order to function effectively in the digital space. But some he didn't like, and we thought they were very effective in the game. He didn't like subscribers buying characters or attributes from other players, which is standard in the online gaming business. He thought they had to earn everything, as he thought, from the bottom up. He thought they ought to be able to trade for them, but he didn't want them to buy them at auction or some secondary market. And he didn't like strategies that he thought were unfair. And of course, it was his criteria for unfair that made all the difference. He didn't like kill stealing, and he didn't like ninja looting.
Okay, well, let's take that the first one first. You said he didn't like it when players were allowed to buy things online, buy character attributes or characters online. Is that something that the Geta Entertainment Company is against?
No, we are not. We see nothing wrong with a secondary market being created for our products. In fact, we think that it's possible that we can exploit and milk that. I mean, that we can also enhance the spiritual development of our players through that market as well. So no, we don't see anything wrong with that, but he did.
Could you describe for the jury how someone might buy or sell attributes or characters online?
Well, sure. You go online, you want something, like one of our commentators has the largest collection of Oriental porn in the world. And so if you wanted to buy, if you wanted to buy something like...
It's him, right? No.
I'm sorry, I was distracted by seeing him for a moment. You go online, it's a place like eBay or Banker Bob's, and you can put it up for auction, and players bid, and there's a time limit, and you can sell it actually for a considerable sum of money, because the people who lose perspective in our virtual world often exaggerate the value of these things and will bid the price up quite significantly.
And you say it's not against the rules. Do you have a terms of service in place for Geta Life players?
Yes, we do. Terms of service is the rule book. It's the rules that set out very explicitly and clearly. When you sign on, you get an agreement, and you can't move into the gaming space unless you click yes on that agreement. And it's about 14 pages long, very small print, and you signify that you've read it and accept it. And those rules are all spelled out in those terms of service.
And does that
Sanskrit.
Does that forbid the purchase or sale of game attributes, character attributes?
No, it certainly doesn't. In fact, it explicitly allows them.
You also mentioned, as part of one of your previous answers, that Weasel seemed to be against what you referred to as kill stealing and ninja looting. Could you describe to the jury what those terms are?
Are you not familiar with those? KSing? You know KSing, right? I mean, kill stealing is where you've got this thing that has something value and you want it, so you can get together with another group of people and you can attack it, and you can when they lose it, when they die, when they lose their vitality and their points go down, they drop this thing, and then one of your little avatars will grab it and run off into the woods with it, and and then that's killing and stealing. I mean, so kill stealing is actually it's killing and stealing. In a nutshell.
Okay. Now, when you talk about them dropping some item, what are you referring to? What kind of item might a creature drop after it's been killed?
Well, we have all sorts of items in the game. We have items that we've actually created from whole cloth, like everything in the game. And we make them up and we give them arbitrary value, and then people treat them as if that value is real. There's the, well, I'm trying to think, there's the big one that everybody knows. There's Elder Dragon's Orb of Wisdom. But the one that everybody wants and that became significant here was Pfizer's Rod of Endurance, which... I don't understand the reaction, really, because we refer to it as the Woody in the game. And you'll often see players typing in, I want the Woody, I want a Woody, I want a Woody. And it's a very valuable and desired object.
Okay. Are there a lot of these objects in your game?
Well, have you ever had a Woody? There's only... You probably know there's only one.
I think I'm going to object to that.
I'll move to strike that last answer.
There's only
after the Asian porn.
There's...
You seem to have an inflated view. Let's get back to the direct examination.
Thank you. He was tumescent in his questioning, was he not? We refer to the Woody as just really kind of your basic upstiffed phallic wand that kind of dips and bobs, as it will, in search of its fulfillment. It's electric red and its tip glows. Like...
Now, was Get a Life against the action that you referred to as kill stealing or ninja looting?
No, we're not.
Why aren't you against that?
Because we think it enhances the value of the game. It's something that was built in from the beginning, and the game is very competitive, and we think it should simulate life if people are going to learn how to strengthen and toughen themselves internally against the vicissitudes of life. We think they ought to have the chance to know what it's like to be mobbed or mugged or tortured or raped or beaten in real life by trying it out first in a virtual world. And so you have to value the things that are important to you and keep them intact and safe and secure, and if you don't, the ninjas may loot them or the killers may steal them.
Now, did Weasel tell you that he was against this practice?
Yes, he did. He sure did.
Did he complain about it?
He complained about it vociferously. He expressed himself with a great deal of passion.
Reluctantly returning to Pfizer's Rod of Endurance.
Which we call the Woody.
Was Pfizer's Rod of Endurance ever actually acquired by any player in the game?
Excuse me. I had a momentary lapse there. You're going way down. Yes, okay. I think we skipped the whole bit about the mob, right? Because the mob, which I was to have previously mentioned, was short for mobiles, which refers to the creatures of this world, to which I had referred antecedently, that carry these things that are of value. A mob was carrying Pfizer's Rod of Endurance. This mob was called Nerf Master Wilcom, and it's probably one of the toughest mobs to kill. Very hard to find, very tough to kill. And it was killed, yes indeed, and it dropped the Woody, and that's what led to the trouble we have today, because Weasel came and he claimed that he and his guild had killed Nerf Master Wilcom.
Now, what do you mean guild?
Well, guild is a collection of sycophants that you collect online to boost your ego and inflate your grandiosity and just generally enhance your exaggerated self and sense of importance. And so he had created one of these to magnify himself to himself. A group, 7, 8 people. It forms a guild or a collective, and they work together online. And he had a guild. It was a tough, tight group, feared and known throughout Get a Life.
Did it have a name?
Pardon me?
Did the guild have a name?
I believe it was referred to online as the Upstiffed Woody Whacking Collective, if I'm not mistaken. I think.
Okay. You said that the acquisition of Pfizer's Rod of Endurance is what led us today. Did you receive a complaint from Weasel about this?
Yes, Weasel wanted us to kick the player who had stolen the Pfizer's Rod of Endurance off the game, and he wanted us to block the connection for his IP address. Basically, this was the death penalty in Get a Life. It would have excluded this person from ever participating again.
And did you investigate or take any action?
Yes, I did. When Weasel gets after you to do something, you either do it or he doesn't shut up. So yes, we did.
All right, well, what did you do?
Well, we investigated, and we discovered that a character in Get a Life known as Jericho was in possession of the Woody. We couldn't tell, though. You can't tell from who has it, whether he had defeated the mob, whether he had traded it from Weasel, who could have done that or given it to him, or whether he got it in some other way. You just can't tell.
You said it was a character named Jericho?
Yeah.
Do you know who Jericho was?
Well, according to our records, his real name is Brian Martin.
Did you take any action against Brian Martin or his character, Jericho?
No. For one thing, nothing had been done wrong that we could determine. There was no reason to do that. And it wouldn't have helped. I mean, there's nothing we could do. We would have had to turn back the whole hands of time. See, this computer thing is very carefully calibrated so that everything moves together at the same time, at least game space time. And if we moved everything back, all actions that had taken place for the 500,000 players would have had to be erased or backed up until the requisite moment, and we couldn't do that. We can't do that. So there was technically nothing that we really should or could do, and there was no reason, according to the terms of service, to do it.
Okay. Was that the end of the matter then?
I wish. No.
Well, what happened next?
Well, that was really only the beginning. I got a call from an Air Force investigator, and he told me that the Get a Life server had been hacked from one of their computers.
Who'd you speak to?
I spoke to he's a low-level air spec guy. I could come up with his name, but I don't want to embarrass him.
Right.
It was somebody on the base.
That's fine. Would you take a look
Jesse something.
at a government exhibit number 9 in front of you?
Number 9, yes, I have that here.
Jury, you have copies of this you can share.
Do you have that in front of you, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Can you tell what this is?
Yeah, sure. It's a bash history log from the Get a Life administrative server. It shows the commands that were run on it on July 28th, 2002.
You looking at exhibit 9?
Well, are we looking at this exhibit,
You have to look at
Counselor?
Exhibit 9.
Go to tab G9, governance 9.
There you go.
See if that...
Normally, the government has prepared their witnesses a lot
Yes,
better.
yes. Yes, that's what I'm looking at. That's
Okay.
right.
And do you recognize that document?
Yeah, as I said, it's the bash history log from our Get a Life administrative server.
Okay.
And it shows what commands were run on it on July 28th, year
Okay.
2002.
Can you tell from these logs who entered these particular commands?
You can't tell from the logs if you look at them, but they do show that files were copied to the server from a computer, and it gives you the IP address of that. It's 10.10.194.143.
Counsel, I take it the parties have stipulated prior to trial for the admission of these exhibits, am I correct?
This particular exhibit,
This
yes, sir.
particular one? All right. 9 evidence. Good.
But can you quickly explain to the jury what the commands are here, what they did?
Well, let me see. For the first one, you're making a directory and changing a directory, and then you see all these files are brought in. And then next command resets Jericho's password, and then he saves the profile of Jericho to a temporary file, and then he creates a user. His name is Raish. Creates that user out of nothing. Then he restores Jericho's character to Raish, and then he returns to that file. He gives us access through restoring the password to that file again, and then he does a global reset.
What is global reset? do?
Global reset is a very big deal. It effectively gets rid of all objects, all levels the character has attained. I mean, it just wipes out all their achievements in the online world we so painstakingly have created and that they've so earnestly endeavored to secure. And then there's a few lines. I don't know what it's some hacker thing. I don't know what that is.
Okay. Are there other logs from the GETA servers that relate to this same series of commands?
Yes, there are.
Would you look at Government Exhibit 10?
Yes, I have it.
Do you recognize that document?
Yeah, this is a log of administrative commands run on the GetaLife admin server, and they reflect the same user as the previous exhibit.
Okay. Are these logs generated in the normal course of operating GetaLife?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And Your Honor, I would move to admit Government Exhibit 10.
Any objection to 10?
No.
All right, 10 will be received.
You said these basically reflect the same commands as shown on Exhibit 9?
Yes, they do. They essentially show the same user as in the previous exhibit, and the commands, all of the documented commands are familiar, similar, and most of the undocumented commands. I know all of these, although they aren't all documented.
Well, what command or commands are undocumented in this list?
Well, the one that leaps out is that one down on the list, 3422. It's an administrative default reset for the user Jericho. That's an undocumented command that I believe Weasel added when he was with the company.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Baggins. Your witness.
All right, Ms. Granick can be cross-examined.
Thank you. Mr. Baggins, how many employees do you have at GETA Entertainment?
It's hard to keep track of that figure, Counselor.
Is there a lot?
It's a significant number.
More than 50?
No. And it's certainly not. It's certainly.
Weasel's not with the company anymore, is he?
Pardon me?
Weasel's no longer with the
Weasel is no longer with the company.
You have hired someone else to do the important jobs that he used to do.
Well, you can't replace the work he did in building the network and building the game, but we have other computer specialists who are working on the same task now to sustain it.
And those people are people who administer the server?
Yes, they are.
And those people know commands that are needed to operate the server?
I don't know that for a fact because, I've never, we've never gone out and had a beer and I've said, what do you know? And they say, we know commands. We've never, I don't know. It's possible, but I have no way of knowing that.
So your multi-million-dollar company has people working for it who don't know how to run the server as system?
Oh, no, they know how to run the server. I thought you asked if they know the specific commands, and I don't know that for a fact. But they certainly keep the computer up and running because it's functional. And I'm familiar with kind of top level what that means, but in terms of what goes on when they get their little dirty hands in the innards, I don't know.
But you know what a bash history file is?
I do, because that's something that became very important for me to know. I wanted to know what the history of my company was, and so I learned that. It's a virtual company. I mean, that's how you find out what's real in the virtual world. You go to the bash history file. I think everybody pretty much knows that.
In this virtual world, you as the CEO control policy, is that correct?
If it were an autocratic, top-down kind of governance, then that would be correct. But I prefer, as I say, our primary focus is spirituality, which means we don't make any major decisions without a collegial approach to the problem. So people not only who directly report to me, but in a 360, people all around the company are frequently asked for their input for determining important things like policy. There's a collective that does make the final decision, of which I'm the titular head, it's true. But we do solicit the opinions of everyone, try to make it a community kind of effort.
This collective has decided to permit people to sell and buy characters, correct?
Absolutely. It's no worse than slavery, and it's much more lucrative.
This collective also issues objects like the Woody.
The Woody is one of our biggest selling items, if you want to know the truth. It comes with
precious.
we have little Woodies and we have large Woodies,
Sir,
and
sir,
you
please. Listen to the question, please. My question is, the collective is the group that decides whether or not to issue items like the Woody.
We set policy, and that includes what kinds of additional objects are sold as part of our gaming environment. That's
And
correct.
how many objects?
Sure.
And what the qualities or characteristics of those objects are?
Yes and no. That's a tricky question because you're asking really an epistemological question there. And the qualities of the object really evolve. I don't know if you've ever been part of a virtual world or know much about hacking, Counselor, but the qualities evolve in the virtual world almost spontaneously. They have a life of their own. And people, through their avatars, express a whole variety of inputs which, over the life of the object, can cause it to look this way or that way. And when it comes out here, we just say that's a good-looking object to sell. But we trust the wisdom of our 500,000 subscribers
So
to
you
determine the
sell
shape.
these objects? Your company sells these objects?
We have a subsidiary, the Get a Woody subsidiary, that distributes that and other objects.
You control how many objects there are that are available to sell.
I wish. The marketplace determines that. This is a free market world, and the marketplace tells us how many Woodies are wanted, and we provide whatever the market demands.
Mr. Beggins, isn't that completely untrue? You make these objects valuable by making them rare, don't you?
The rarity, again, is a spontaneous manifestation, an emergent property, the complexity of the system itself. I wish we could make them rare, but we can't, because when we try, if we had tried to make them rare and the players of the game spontaneously generate more, then we would not have that kind of control. It is a truly complex, chaotic system, and it does manifest unpredictable characteristics, of which the number of Woodies is one. You're a very beautiful woman, Counselor. Do you know that? All this talk about Woodies has just gotten me confused. You have to.
Isn't it true, Mr. Beggins?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Avoid any comments about the council.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm sure you know what middle age is like. Okay.
Mr. Beggins, isn't it true that you're making this up and you have absolutely no idea how a Woody is made? I have no further questions.
Is that Your Honor, are you not going to jump on, I mean, so to speak, jump on?
Just answer the question.
No, I'm a middle-aged man who knows how Woodies are made.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect? All right, thank you, Mr. Baggins. Watch your step.
Mr. Richard Thiem, ladies and gentlemen.
But you may call your next one.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to call to the stand Ryan Bullitt.
We'll dispense with the swearing. You've been sworn, so just have a seat. And, enough swearing from the witness stand.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
Ryan Bulat.
How old are you, Ryan?
I'll be 19 on October 15th.
Okay. Are you employed or are you a student?
No, I'm a student
Where are you a student?
at Rennie School.
At where?
Rennie School.
Rennie School. Okay. Have you ever heard of Get a Life?
Yes, I was a subscriber for 3 years.
Are you still a subscriber?
Yes, but I don't play very often anymore.
Why not?
I got into some trouble and don't want to play that much anymore.
Mr. Bulat, why don't you take the microphone out to the podium in front there?
Thank you. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ryan, do you have a character in Get a Life?
Yes, I have a character named Taran.
Taran?
Taran.
Okay. Is he a powerful character, relatively speaking?
Yes, I would say so. I was allowed to be a part of Weasel's Guild, and Weasel's Guild was the top in our server.
Who asked you to be a member of Weasel's Guild?
Weasel did.
Okay. And that's some kind of honor?
Yeah, Weasel's Guild is the best.
You still think so?
I still think so.
Have you ever met Weasel in person?
No, only through Get a Life.
When did you first run into Weasel in Get a Life?
Soon after I subscribed to the game, he helped me kill a mob in the game, and he liked the way I played, so he asked me to join him.
What'd you think of him?
I really tried to model my character off of him. He was really just everything I wanted to be in the game.
Did you let him know how you felt about him?
In subtle ways, yes.
Man, I don't even want to know what those subtle ways are.
Would you take a look at Government Exhibit 19? You can just grab tab 19 there. You recognize that document?
Yes, that's a IRC log between me and Weasel.
This is a discussion between you and Weasel. Is it an accurate and true representation of that conversation?
Yes, this is from January 19th.
Your Honor, I would move to introduce into evidence Government Exhibit 19.
Any
and publish in the
objection
jury.
to 19?
No, Your Honor.
19 will be received.
Now, is Weasel participating in this discussion?
Yes, he is.
All right. Would you, and with the help of Simple Nomad, read for the jury the portions that you spoke, if you would, in this conversation, and have Simple Nomad read the parts that Weasel said?
Hold on, I don't have a copy of the evil government-prepared script yet in front of me. Hold on.
Would you like me to start or him?
I think Weasel's the first line, right?
A handsome man walks into the room.
That's the wrong log.
Oh, it's the wrong one. Hey, what's up?
And we can skip the parts that aren't you or Weasel.
Yes, I'm not Smoochy or Grand Whore.
Oh, okay. Just finished working on some new hacker tools. Been at it for 10 hours. Got on for a little break.
Sounds like my day. I just got finished taking a nasty trig test. Smiley.
Geez, Tehran, I should send you my hacker tools to play with.
I seem to have missed one. Well then, bite me, Smoochy.
Oh, sorry. Then, geez, Tehran, I should send you my hacker tools to play with.
What for?
You can try them out on people and not worry about getting into trouble. They won't throw a kid in jail. You don't have to worry about being Bubba's bitch. Smiley face. Bah. Just need someone to test my new tools before I release them. No harm, no foul. Smiley face.
Sure, Weasel. Send them over. I'll play around with them.
You got it. They'll be to you in a few minutes. Now let's go kill some mobs. I need a long break.
Thank you for that emotional reading.
Oh, thank you. You know, if I had a nickel for every time I had to do that in federal court, I tell you.
Now, did Weasel actually give you some tools?
Yes, he did.
Do you know a get-a-life character known as Jericho?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Jericho?
Jericho kill-stole one of our mobs that we were planning to kill for weeks. Nerf Master Wilcom.
Was he a member of the guild, Weasel's guild?
No, in fact, he was an enemy to Weasel.
Why was he an enemy of Weasel?
Weasel didn't condone the buying of characters as Jericho had done.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what you were referring to, the kill steal. Could you describe for the jury what happened with the kill steal?
Well, we had planned to engage this mob that was a once-in-a-lifetime encounter, and we had started to fight it when Jericho had come, and he finished it off, and he ended up getting the loot rights to the Pfizer Staff of Endurance.
Rod of Endurance.
I'm sorry, the rod.
Did you do anything about it?
Oh, at the time, we were very upset, and we tried to make his virtual life a living hell by verbally accosting him every time we could see him.
Kind of like Jericho's usual Friday and Saturday nights.
Let's see. Take a look at Government Exhibit 3, if you would. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do. That's a guild chat from July 5th, the day of the KS.
Okay. And who's involved in this chat?
Me, Weasel, and a few other guildmates.
Okay. And is this a true and accurate representation of the discussion?
Yes, it is.
All right. Your Honor, I would move to admit Government Exhibit 3 into evidence and publish to the jury.
Any objection, Ms. Granick, to Exhibit 3?
No, Your Honor.
All right, that'll be received, and the jury can.
And again, Your Honor, if I could have Simple Nomad read the part of Weasel.
You can attempt to do that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that.
Notice how the counsel lines up his witness like a golfer lines up his putts.
That KSing eBaying son of a bitch blows. He's ruining this game. In the old days, I could have had him banned for this, but ever since Baggins took over, customer service has been a service of suck. You can't get a GA to answer you for days.
I'll obey your whims, master. I'll do whatever it takes, Weasel.
I don't condone that kind of behavior, smiley face, but I wouldn't shed any tears if he were taught not to screw with us, winking smiley face.
What did you understand this exchange to mean?
Well, that last line was pretty evident to me that we should do something about this kill-stealing bastard. So I figured that we should get together and plan to do something.
Okay.
Maybe an attack, for instance.
Okay, well, what did you do first? in that
Well,
regard?
the next day, July 6th, me and Jericho got into a verbal discussion, a heated discussion, about his kill steal and how me and Weasel thought it was very wrong of him to do. It really hurt us emotionally and spiritually.
After this discussion, what did you do?
Well, Weasel had said that he would develop some hacker tools that I could use on Jericho to just destroy his character. So he said that he was going to develop those and get back to me.
And when did this happen?
He said this on July 6th,
Okay, and when was the event with the Nerf Master?
the day before July 5th.
Okay. Now, do you have any logs that show that conversation with Weasel?
No, I don't. He told me to turn logging off because he said it would be safer.
And you did so?
Yes, I did.
What'd you do after that conversation with Weasel?
Well, I let him develop his tools, and he got back to me on the 24th when he told me that he had finished the tools and he said he was sending them to me with instructions on how to use them.
Okay. Did you actually get tools from Weasel?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And again, how did that conversation happen?
That was through an IRC discussion that he told me to turn logging off also.
Okay, so you don't have a log of that.
No.
What did he tell you in that discussion on July 24th?
He told me that I should use these tools to attack Jericho's character, that I would first have to mount an attack on the Air Force server to run the attack because I needed a Unix interface and I didn't have a Unix OS at my house.
Okay, so the first step was to attack an Air Force machine?
Yes, that was...
Did you know what Air Force machine you were supposed to attack?
No, he gave me the IP address, so I just attacked that IP address.
And did you know how to attack an Air Force machine?
No, he sent me all the tools and all the instructions, everything. I just did exactly as he said.
Okay. And what was supposed to happen after you attacked the Air Force machine?
I was supposed to launch my attack from there on the Get a Life server, the server that houses all the characters database, so I could use the data for Jericho's character and do what I wanted with it.
Did you know where Get a Life server was?
No, he gave me the IP address for that too.
Okay. So you were supposed to attack from the Air Force machine?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And did you know how you were going to attack Get a Life server?
No, he sent me instructions for that too.
Right. Once you got all the instructions...
I'm not sure the jury understands, and I know I surely don't. When you say attack the Air Force machine,
I mean hack into it.
hack into an Air Force machine, so you're not in the Get a Life
No.
game at that point. You're going outside to another site.
Yes, that's right.
All right.
So what was the first step in this in this process?
Well, he told me to use a tool called Nmap to scan the Air Force servers to see if they were running SSH. So I did so, and I saw that they were running SSH. He then told me to use the
Let's back up a minute. You ran something called Nmap?
Yes, that's
And
right.
what is that? It's a program?
Yes, it's a tool that lets you see what operations are running.
Okay. And did you have a copy of Nmap?
No, he sent that to me also.
And what did you scan? What computer did you scan?
The Air Force computer, Grace.
What happened after you scanned the Air Force machine?
I saw that SSH was running, and he told me to launch my attack through the SSH port, so that's what I did.
Okay. And what tool did you use to attack what you referred to as the SSH port?
I used the tool that he gave me. It was SSH Nuke, I believe.
And what was the result of this?
Well, from there, I had full access to the Air Force machine, so then I could launch my attack to the Get a Life server.
From the Air Force machine?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, were there any other steps you took while you were on the Air Force machine, or did you?
Yes, I used a rootkit tool.
What's a rootkit tool?
It wipes my logs, so I would be unseen.
And did you have a rootkit tool as well?
No, he sent that to me as well.
Okay. And where are all these tools?
Well, I saved them to my home directory after he sent them to me.
All right. Did you actually launch this attack that you're referring to?
Yes, with the instructions from Weasel.
Okay. On what day did you attack the Air Force machine?
July 28th.
July 28th of 2002?
Yes, that's correct.
And where were you when you launched this attack?
I was at my home.
Okay. Let's just back up one step. You said you ran Nmap against the Air Force machine. What is there output? How do you know that there was an SSH port open on that?
It gave me a list of what was running, and from that list I saw SSH.
Would you turn to Exhibit 5, please? Do you recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
And what is that document?
That is the list I just spoke of.
Okay. This is the output from the Nmap?
Yes.
Does that reflect your IP address?
No.
What is that IP address there on the right hand?
That IP address is the IP address of the Air Force computer.
Okay. Once you were able to get onto the Air Force machine, what attack did you launch against the GetUs server?
Well, I used Nmap to make sure that SSH was running there, and it was, so I could use the same exploit through SSH to get to the character database server, and then I could run a string of commands to destroy Jericho's character and take all of his items.
Okay.
These commands were given to me by Weasel as well, so I just did it exactly as it said.
Yeah, would you take a look at Government Exhibit 13, please?
Yes, those are them.
Those are what?
Those are the commands.
Those are commands that were given to you by Weasel?
Yes, those are the exact commands he gave me that I just typed in exactly as they are to destroy Jericho's character.
Okay. At the top of it, it says, here are those commands you were asking about. Did you ask for these commands?
Yes, because once I was there, I wasn't sure what I should do on the character database server. So I asked him what exactly I should type in, and this is what he told me.
Okay. And what was the result of your putting in these commands in the Get a Life server?
Well, it gave me all of Jericho's items to a character that I created called Raish, and it reset his character back down to level 1, which just destroyed him forever.
Well, so where did all his items go?
On a character that I created, Raish.
Okay. And then what happened with Raish?
Well, I used Raish, since it was my character, to take all those items, and I later sold all of them except for Pfizer's Rod of Endurance.
Okay. So you actually got Pfizer's Rod of Endurance?
Yes,
through
I
this?
did get the Woody.
Now, you said you sold the items. Where did you sell the items?
On a Banker Bob account that I have.
So it was an online auction?
Yes.
What happened to the money?
I kept what I wanted, but I gave 1,500 of it to Weasel
How did you give the money to Weasel?
through the Banker Bob account.
Did he have a Banker Bob account?
Yes, he did.
What happened with the Rod of Endurance?
I gave that to him in-game later because I felt he deserved it.
So a minor gave Weasel a Woody. All right, just keeping track.
Would you take a look at Government Exhibit 15, please? Do you recognize that document?
Yes, that is my Banker Bob account.
And what are those items on there? What do those reflect?
Those are all of Jericho's items that I sold, all those marked with the S on the end there.
Okay, everything with an S indicates that you sold the item,
Yes.
and each of those items came from Jericho?
Yes, that is correct.
Mr. Ryan, did you get caught?
Yes.
What happened?
There was another machine that was doing a dual log on the Air Force computer that I didn't realize, so they logged everything I had even after I wiped it.
Okay. Have you talked to law enforcement about this case?
Yes, I have.
Have you been promised anything for your testimony here today?
And they promised that in response for my truthful testimony that they would speak to the state authorities to try to take it easy on me.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, thank you, Ms. Grant.
Thank you. Ryan, Weasel was the guild leader, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
He was an important person in the game,
Yes, he was.
a powerful person in the game.
Yes,
And you were honored to be a member of his guild.
of course.
You wanted to impress Weasel.
Always.
And you wanted to be his friend.
Yes. But I believe we were friends.
You were friends.
Yes.
You're not friends any longer, though, are you?
That's true.
Now, Weasel didn't approve of the buying and selling of characters, did he?
No, he did not.
Weasel was very, almost religious about the rules of the game, wasn't he?
Yes, that's true.
Would it be fair to say that Weasel wanted the game to be played on its own terms?
Yes, it would be fair to say that.
Now, in addition to being in Weasel's guild, you often asked him for help with your study of computer security, didn't you?
Yes, that's true.
And Weasel was helpful to you.
Yes, he was.
He provided you with information
Yes.
and guidance
Yes.
and tools for you to test.
On occasion, yes.
And this was something that Weasel did for you well before this dispute arose with Brian Martin's character.
Yes, that's true.
Can we turn to Defense Exhibit 2? Defense Exhibit 2, please. Mr. Boulat, do you recognize Defense Exhibit 2?
Yes, that's an IRC log between me and Weasel.
And do you remember having that conversation with Weasel?
Yes.
On what date did you have that conversation?
On March 14th, 2002.
And in this conversation, can you characterize what's going on here?
Well, he was asking me if I was going to be on the raid, and, or never mind, I asked if he was going to be on the raid, and he said yes, but he was messing around with some new tools. And I said that I wanted to ask him that I was trying to compile FISBIN 0.9, ran into some problems, and he said he would help me with it. And I said I had many problems with compiling it. And he told me that he would take a look at it because he's not really doing much until the end of the raid.
Now, so he provided you with the help that you asked for?
Yes.
Out of friendship?
I think so, yes.
Now, in addition, did you share logons and passwords with other members of your guild?
Everybody in the guild had everyone else's password, yes.
When Okay, so now your testimony today is that you didn't know enough about computers to pull this off without Weasel's help, is that right?
That's right.
Now, you were running Linux on your computer, that weren't you?
Yes, I do have Linux.
And you had the virtual network computing program on your computer, didn't you?
Yes, that's true.
And that's a computer that allows you to operate another computer remotely, correct?
Yes.
No, you're not a system administrator or anything.
No.
You're a high school student.
Yes.
You don't have any other computers that you're authorized to operate remotely, do you?
Yes, that's true.
So that tool is something that you can only use without authorization.
I suppose so, yes.
When you were, can we turn to Government Exhibit 3, please? Now, if you can look at the second line of Government Exhibit 3 for me, it says, you tell the guild. That's you, right? Who's talking there?
Yes, that's me.
And in this sentence, you use a word that's F-S-C-K-I-N-G. And I imagine, does that refer to a common English swear word?
Yes, yes it does.
But there's an S in there where the U normally is, correct?
Yes, there is.
And is that some kind of computer joke?
I suppose it could be interpreted as a computer joke.
Does that relate to Unix?
Yes, FSCK is a Unix command.
And you knew that command and you knew that it was a joke.
Yes, I did.
And that's why you used it in this chat.
Yes.
Now, you are the person who hacked into the Air Force computer, aren't you?
Yes, inputted the physical commands.
You did that.
Yes.
And during the time that you did that, you asked for help from Weasel.
Yes, I did.
And just like in the past, he provided you with that help.
Yes.
Can we look at that exhibit, which is Exhibit 21, please? Government's Exhibit 21. Do you have it?
Almost there. Okay.
And is this an accurate representation of your conversation with Weasel?
Yes, it is an accurate conversation.
Now, you said that Weasel told you not to log while he was helping you with this hack, correct?
That was the IRC in Get a Life. This was a different IRC.
So you were
window.
logging a different IRC.
Yes, this was a different IRC that I did not turn logging off.
And in this one IRC that you happen to log, there's nothing about hacking into the Air Force computer, is there?
No, there is nothing said about hacking into the Air Force computer.
And Weasel didn't know what operating system you were dealing with, did he?
No, he did not.
And there's nothing about hacking into the Get a Light server.
No, not listed here, no.
Nothing about your goals in your effort to attack this machine.
Not in this exhibit, no.
Now, you told us also that Weasel was concerned about logging, yet you claim he sent you an email during the attack?
He sent me an email of the tools just before the attack.
And with those commands?
Yes, and instructions for those tools, which listed the commands as well.
And that email came off of your computer, didn't it?
Yes, that was on my computer.
The computer that was in your possession that you gave to law enforcement?
Yes.
And there's no headers to that email?
None.
And there's no date?
No.
And you could have written that email yourself and put it on your own computer, couldn't you?
I suppose that's possible, yes.
Now, you're the one who hacked into the Air Force computer, correct?
Yes, I physically did the hack.
And you're the one who hacked into the Get a Life computer.
Yes.
And you're the one who reset the Jericho character.
Yes.
And Weasel, there's nothing, you don't have anything where Weasel asked you to do that.
I don't have any logs, no, because he instructed me to turn them off.
You sold the Jericho character's items.
Yes, that's right.
And you made money off of it.
Yes.
And then you decided to open a Banker Bob account, didn't you?
I had had a previous Banker Bob account that I had used for this.
But you opened one for Weasel, didn't you?
Yes, that is true.
And you gave him money.
Yes.
Now, you got caught
Yes, that's true.
because all the logs on the server say that it was you.
Yes, they did.
And this is a felony, you realize.
Yes, I do realize that.
And the law enforcement, when they came, they told you you could go to prison for this.
Yes, they did.
And you're a juvenile,
Yes, I am.
and you didn't want to go to prison.
No, I didn't.
So you told him you weren't smart enough to do this,
Yes, that's what I said.
and that you didn't know enough about computers to do this,
That's true.
and you decided to blame it on your friend, the person who helped you learn about computers, Weasel.
Well, since he was to blame, that is why I did that.
By blaming Weasel, you're getting out of trouble, aren't you?
Yes, I suppose that is a consequence to this action.
You're getting a misdemeanor charge instead of a felony,
Yes, that is true.
and instead of prison, you'll probably get probation, won't you?
Yes, probation.
And you understand probation means you're not going to go to prison.
Yes, that's true.
So pinning this on Weasel has greatly helped you.
Yes, I have experienced some benefits from this.
And you've got to make the case against Weasel good.
Yes.
So you falsified the email, correct?
Yeah. No.
You li-
Dun dun.
And you lied about the agreement, didn't you?
No.
At the very least, haven't you just talked yourself into thinking that this is what Weasel wanted?
No, he told me this is what he wanted.
I have no further questions.
All right, thank you.
A couple redirect, thank you, Your Honor. Ryan, who gave you VNC?
Weasel gave me a copy of VNC.
Now, let's go back to that email. You said there was no headers on it, and the question was asked of you, could you have written this yourself? And you said yes. Do you know the commands that are in that email?
No, I don't.
So could you have written that email?
No.
All right. If you don't tell the truth today, what's going to happen to you?
I will have to go to jail.
Thank you. No more questions.
Any response?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Holy crap, Weasel's running away.
Members of the jury, the clerk is going to take charge of you during this recess. It's particularly important you remember the admonition I gave you previously. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves, and don't let anyone discuss it with you. Do not conduct any independent research or investigation regarding the case. Do not consider news accounts regarding the case, and remember to reserve your judgment for the cases submitted to you. We'll be in recess until 6:45. 20 minutes.
And if anyone sees the jurors trying to get to the head of the buffet line, please help them do so we have a jury during the second half of the trial.